Hi Year 12s. Today we're going to be looking at the last PowerPoint in our homeostasis topic. So in our previous PowerPoints we've looked at the nervous system, tolerance ranges and the endocrine system. In this video what we're going to be doing is looking at actually comparing the nervous and the endocrine system against each other and seeing what each one is responsible for in terms of homeostasis in our bodies. So let's begin. These are the last need to know for the homeostasis topic. As per usual, if you'd like to write these down, I'm more than happy for you to pause the video and write them down, but I'm not going to go through them in the video. So, homeostatic control, what is it? Homeostatic control is our body's way of keeping everything at the right tolerance ranges to ensure that our body works at optimum conditions. And our nervous system and our endocrine system are responsible for different components of that. So, for example, the nervous system is responsible for controlling the stimulus response as well as the reflexes, and they're also responsible for controlling the carbon dioxide levels in our blood. Whereas the endocrine system is responsible for controlling blood glucose levels, our metabolic reactions, as well as osmoregulation. Everything else that's part of homeostasis is actually controlled by both of those systems, the endocrine system and the nervous system, working together in order to create homeostasis in our bodies. So, a great example of that is the fight or flight situation. We sort of talked about this a little bit when we talked about the sympathetic nervous system. So, fight or flight is a physiological response to stress or fear. It's named the way, fight or flight, because it allows an organism to either fight for survival or escape from danger depending on the situation. And it's controlled by the endocrine and nervous system, which is why it's an important one to talk about, because it's both those systems working together to actually use fight or flight. So the response begins once you start to have that stress or fear, begins in your sensory receptors, and those receptors transmit the information to the hypothalamus of the endocrine system. The hypothalamus will then respond via the autonomic nervous system, and the sympathetic nervous system will be switched on. So remember talking about the sympathetic nervous system, go back to their nervous system PowerPoint if you need to know how that works. What happens then is the sympathetic nervous system sends nerve impulses to stimulate the adrenal glands, and those adrenal glands will release a hormone known as adrenaline into the blood. Now, when adrenaline's in the blood, it increases our heart rate, it increases the blood pressure, it dilates your bronchial tubes in your lungs, dilutes the pupils in your eyes, and it increases the blood flow to muscles, increasing your metabolic rate. Once the danger is past, then your parasympathetic nervous system takes over and returns everything to normal. Adrenaline is no longer stimulated to be released by the nervous system. How do the endocrine nervous system work in those situations? So for thermoregulation, the endocrine system controls body temperature through the secretion of adrenaline, insulin, and thyroxine. By releasing those, we're going to increase the amount of hormones in the body, which is going to increase the rate of respiration, and consequently increases the amount of heat that's released as a byproduct, heating up the entire body. On the nervous system, on the other hand, we use thermoreceptors to detect heat changes, which causes our nervous system to transmit nerve pulses between the hypothalamus and the effectors. And that can trigger sweating, shivering, or goosebumps. Now, what goosebumps really is just the erections of hair or feathers on the skin to trap a layer of air close to the body, which is almost like creating an insulating barrier to prevent heat from being lost. How do they both work together though? So there's two separate ways of how endocrine controls thermoregulation and how nervous system controls thermoregulation, but they also both work together. So they work together through vasoconstriction and vasodilation, which is restricting the flow of blood to the surface of the skin to reduce heat loss, or making more blood flow to the surface of the skin to increase heat loss. How that happens is there's arterioles. Arterioles supply blood to the skin surface, and they have a very thin elastic layer. That gives them the ability to open up and allow more blood to flow through, which is what we call vasodilation. But they can also restrict and allow less blood to flow through, which is vasoconstriction. How do we control osmoregulation? Well, the endocrine system will control osmoregulation through the secretion of ADH through the pituitary gland. The nervous system will control osmoregulation by transmitting nerve impulses between the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, but it's also worth noting the nervous system can incite sweating to remove excess water. That's more thermoregulation than osmoregulation though. Next up, we're looking at the control of glucoregulation. Endocrine system, how that helps is by secreting insulin and glucagon to regulate blood glucose, whereas the nervous system, again, is just transmitting nerve impulses from the brain to your adrenal glands only in the fight or flight situations. Chemoregulation. So this is another important one. The endocrine system controls chemoregulation through secretion of adrenaline and thyroxine, which increases our breathing rate. And if you increase your breathing rate, you're going to remove the excess carbon dioxide in your body. The nervous system, on the other hand, will transmit nerve impulses between chemoreceptors and the medulla, and the effectors telling your body when to remove carbon dioxide through breathing rate, etc. Lastly, how does the nervous system compare to the endocrine system? So, the nervous system sends electrochemical messages, while the endocrine system sends chemical messages. The nervous system sends those electrical chemical messages via neurons called nerve cells, whereas the endocrine system sends their messages through the bloodstream. Nervous system is incredibly fast, where the endocrine system is very slow, ranging from seconds to a number of days. The duration of the nervous system, though, is very short. It's a very brief response, whereas the endocrine system has a longer lasting effect, upwards of hours. The nervous system will target muscles, cells, glands, or neurons, where the endocrine system will target tissues or organs. The nervous system will target very specific sections of tissue, whereas the endocrine system will target less specific tissues and just kind of the ones that are in that area. The response from the nervous system is generally muscle contractions or secretion of a product, where endocrine system will respond with protein or genetic level.